Whenever you're ready.
Okay. So now we're going to look at the fourth clip, and this is the final clip. And this is where you are remediating the student's question that we just talked about with 30 and 36.
Okay.
I guess it probably helps just to, so the prime factorization of 30 is 2. Let me get this right. 38 times 5, and 36 is 2 times 2 times 3 times 3. And the student is trying to figure out how many 2's are common. So let's see. So you're going to be focusing on how you talk to the student and get them to understand. You're right there. In case you can't see me.
Okay. That's what you're asking me to say? Are your numbers? Are these, huh? No, right? So you want to say they have your phone? I mean, it's on my back to this. They have 2's and 3's, right? But how many of each do they actually make? How many 2's do they make? No, so that doesn't work. So you already told me they have 1, 2, and 1, 3 in common, correct? So they have only 1, 2 and only 1, 3, and I need to multiply 2 and 3. And so their factor is what? I'm looking at them, you're looking at them 30 and 36. I'm looking at them as a whole. See, I'm looking at it as a whole, not line by line. Take another minute, guys. It shouldn't even take you another minute. Can you raise your voice and let Miss Anna check them? I want to know what they have in common. So we share this one friend. So looking at all together, what do they have in common? So we share this one friend. Are there 2 of us? Because there's 2 of us. They both share how many 2? They share. How many 2's are there? 1. So what is the most they can share? What's the greatest number of 2's they can share? 30 only has 1 2, and 36 has 2 2. What is the most they can share? Do you want me to go to the next one too? Mm-hmm. Next one. 30 and 2 2? Yeah. So what is the most? 1, right?
Oh, because that's small.
So they have 1, 2, right? And then how many 3s do they have in common? Or do they have the same amount? 1. If there was another 2. If this is
64.
so, can you turn those back?
I can make that now.
But it's not 62, you can't. Yeah. So that won't give you 30. You're changing this one. Times 5 is 20.
No, I'm not done yet. 4 times 3 times 3.
2 times 2 times 4 times 3.
No, 2 and 2 times 3. 27. Oh, that's 37.
That's 32.
Oh my gosh.
That's not trying to change numbers.
Question, I don't know. Math question.
Are you seeing why the grade common factor is 6? Because of what they have in common. This idea of common, if we both have Lily in common, we don't have 2 Lilies, we only have 1 Lily. If we both have these, if we have all 3 of them in common, then we have 3. But we don't. We only have 1. Okay? So here, they only share 1, 2, and they only share 1, 6. Had this been 60, then it'd be a different. It'd be a different.
Alright.
Okay?
You also like honestly the explanation to like my most combative child.
Oh,
Like,
really?
Tobias just it has to be right. Like there's a part of him that just has to be right. So like I can see his face in that whole explanation. Like Bailey though.
Well, and what's good is so your most combative child, your mediation was really strong. The Raiders just, were happy with it. They thought it was really good. It was at length. It was really, you made a connection back to the initial analogy of the common friend and how many lilies are there.
Yes, there's a girl named Lily.
Oh, I figured there must be. So that was really good, and it really just sort of helped. And it was interesting that this. At least I found it interesting about the student saying, yeah, but what if there's a 2 here? You said, no, that changes the number. It's not 30 anymore if there's another 2 there. So it was you were really working with the student to kind of look at the various options and really understand why the answer is what it is now. So that was good. So that was the feedback. So it was, and with a really good clip there.
It was also really entertaining to watch all that was happening because clearly I'm where I am and I was like, this is why I never leave teaching you guys. You cannot be alone by yourself. Like you're like hitting yourself with the board. What are you doing?
So to end the session, we want to just sort of talk about some next steps.
Okay.
And there are 2 kinds of next steps to talk about. One is sort of if you're going to be teaching fractions again soon, or not fractions, sorry, something that has to do with greatest common factor, and that could be something to do with fractions. Are there things from this feedback that you'd want to focus on specifically when you work with greatest common factor, or whether it's in the context of fractions or not? And then there's another kind of next steps, which is sort of like the next time you're teaching any topic, what kinds of things do you want to be thinking a little bit more about based off of this feedback? I don't know if you have any thoughts about those.
Definitely the clarity thing. That this was one of the very first one with the fraction. It just made a lot more sense, and like visually, like had I put that on the board, I think that would have like made a lot more sense. Yes, I can say this denominator, but like you said, the numerator was 3. That would have completely changed what I was going for.
Yeah.
And so definitely being more intentional about using fractions in this, because I think that connection between fractions and greatest common factor is where a lot of the pitfalls come in. And so from the beginning, showing them why greatest common factor is important, and the biggest, like, yes, you can use it for lots of things that are not involving fractions, but our purpose is going to be fractions at this moment, and so like given that, I think was really good. And then just the language, those absolutes. With math, I have to remind myself to use math vocabulary. That's why I why I push it so hard with my kids, almost more so to remind myself, like, no, it's not minus, like, it's not times. Like, you're finding the product of something, or, like, I'm finding the sum of something, like that. So using accurate and precise language, that V is small, but it does make a difference. I would have been the kid that would have been like, oh, so it's only these two numbers. So, that's definitely, and then slowing down. I was like, shoot, I was talking fast. I wouldn't have got half that stuff I said. So, just slow down just a little bit, as a teacher talking.
So the two things that you mentioned, in addition to slowing down, but the clarity of the language from the feedback, those are actually things that can connect to the next time you teach something that has to do with greatest common factor or fractions, or the next time you teach any kind of concept. Just sort of making sure, and making sure that you're clear and you follow through with the entire example, and writing it down and making sure that the full example is there. Is something to think about, and the same thing with using the precise language. Are you teaching fractions anytime? Is this going to lead to something with fractions or greatest common factor anytime in the near future?
Yes, it'll go into, like, it's theoretically I should be teaching fractions after. I should be teaching this before fractions. I started fractions before, but we'll be going back to it.
So that's something to think about when you go back to fractions.
But and they're not very good at simplifying, and so I wanted them to, like, this be one of the ways they can help.
And will they be, and so you might be revisiting the greatest common factor to simplify. So maybe something to think about too is there a way, if kids are struggling with finding the greatest common factor, using a prime factorization, you could possibly revisit that. Maybe not if the Venn diagram makes sense to them, or having sort of lists, once they do the trees, writing down the factors, and then picking out the ones explicitly that they see in both lists. And you might also try just talking about, why is this the greatest common factor? These are all the primes that they share in common. So that's something you can think about with that. You might want to revisit that too, and then the language issue, as you mentioned. Okay, good. So I'm going to enter this into the system, and then I will be getting you a copy of everything.
Okay.
Thank you so much for meeting with me. It was great. And we'll meet again.
Thank you.